What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett, bringing you a rundown of the Week 8 action, some quick observations, and then looking again at my most up-to-date top 10, just kind of thoughts on the college football landscape in general. But if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so that you are always up to date whenever I post. But without further ado, let's dive into the Week 8 observations. And obviously, number one is Ohio State's shutdown defense performance against Penn State. You can call it, some bad offense. Both teams didn't play their best game, that's for sure. But Ohio State ends up getting the W, getting a big top 10 win in Columbus, and really puts themselves into control in the Big Ten East at the moment. Michigan, I still think, ranks ahead of them, deservedly so. And that game, when those two face off right now, is shaping up legitimately to potentially be a 1 versus 2. We've gotten used to seeing 2 versus 3, but I think there's a possibility that Georgia slips up and straight up loses a game and drops behind both of those teams, or they continue to just look shaky and the voters kind of look at it not from a picture of, they're back-to-back national champs, but they actually, this is a new team, new year, and they haven't quite looked the part. But sticking to this game, I think Kyle McCord made the throws that he needed to. But maybe more than that, I think it was the best wide receiver in America, Marvin Harrison Jr., stepping up and making big plays. For the second straight year against the Nittany Lions, he caught over 10 passes for well over 100 yards. I think in the last two years combined, he's somewhere around 25 receptions in both games for not too far off 300 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr. continues to prove why he is the best wide receiver in the country, and he made big plays as well. The question now is whether either team can hang with the Michigan Wolverines. Before the season, my prediction was a 3-way tie in the Big Ten East. Honestly, no longer do I consider that a realistic possibility. Penn State, of course, can turn things around. Drew Aller can turn things around from what was a shaky performance against Ohio State. But I would say Michigan's defense is even tougher than the Buckeyes' defense, than the secondary and everything. And so I think Penn State probably once again finishes the season with 2 losses, both to Ohio State and Michigan. And then it's a matter of can the Buckeyes hang with the Wolverines? Last 2 matchups, it's been all Michigan. And right now, I would probably go with that. I would probably say that Michigan, especially considering it's in Ann Arbor, pulls out the win. But the question for the Wolverines is, how do they handle the ongoing investigation around spying, scouting, whatever perspective you hold on that. For me, I think it's a matter of they were doing things illegally. They got caught doing it. I think there should be some sort of punishment, but I think there should also be a more wide-scoping investigation by the NCAA into the illegal side of scouting in general, because obviously there's scouting and there's nothing inherently wrong about seeing a team make a sign and understanding that when they make that sign, they're calling a certain play, they're calling a certain motion, a protection, whatever the case is, snap count, whatever, and capitalizing on that. And I think it's just a matter of, the rule of there being, not allowed to have a staffer at a game that the team isn't playing in. I think there should be some sort of consequences to be levied out, but I don't think it should be anything extraordinarily severe, especially if they don't take a look at other programs and kind of, again, the wide scoping of this scouting in college football in general. But a few other points. I might talk about that more in depth in another video, but a few more points from Week 8. Florida State is back in my top 5. They had kind of slipped out with some lackluster performances, but they get a good win against a solid Duke team by a couple of touchdowns, and I think they're back in that picture. On the flip side, Oklahoma and Texas both won close against teams that they probably should have handled more comfortably, especially the Sooners at home against UCF. Texas had to go into Houston team that's picked up a little bit of momentum after that last-second Hail Mary win against West Virginia. I think both of those teams kind of had a little bit of a wake-up call of, everybody saying, the rematch is a guarantee between these two teams, meeting in Arlington this time instead of in Dallas, just a few miles down the road from the Cotton Bowl at AT&T Stadium. But I think both teams kind of had maybe a little bit of a wake-up call. I think they had a bye after they played against each other, so that might have been part of it too. Oklahoma this week is at Kansas, and Texas faces the challenge now of being without Quinn Ewers for at least a few weeks, potentially an extended period of time. So that'll be something that they need to figure out for the Texas offense. North Carolina is likely out of the college football playoff picture. At least, for Oklahoma and Texas, they pull out the wins. North Carolina had kind of a gimme game at home against Virginia at home that they probably should have handled business in, and instead the Cavaliers come in and pick up a big win. So definitely good for Virginia. A lot of things have been going on that have been really tough for that program, especially when they lost 3 players in the tragic shooting last year that ended up canceling kind of the last couple games of their season. So it's good to see the Cavaliers pick up a win like that. But for the Tar Heels, Drake May will probably stay outside fringe Heisman candidacy, but I think the Tar Heels are done and out of the playoff picture in a conference that outside of Florida State is not very deep. And you even look, I think Miami picked up a win against Clemson. So Miami maybe getting some climbing the rungs of the ladder a little bit again, but I think it's Florida State's conference to lose, and they should honestly continue to run the table the rest of the way. And the teams that benefit from North Carolina's loss, and we're kind of already getting into this kind of one-loss dark horse range behind teams like Oregon, Alabama, Texas, Penn State, are Ole Miss, Utah, and Missouri. I think those 3 teams are both in an area where if they can run the table, and it's going to be tough. Ole Miss plays at Georgia. Utah this week plays Oregon. They host the Ducks, but it's still a very tough challenge against Bo Nix and the Oregon offense and a solid defense as well. And then Missouri has a tough slate, but I think they are the number 2 team in the SEC East. And when they go to Athens against the Bulldogs, if Georgia's without Brock Bowers, Tigers played the Bulldogs very close last year in Columbia. I think there's a strong chance they play them close again this year, and if they can pull off the upset, they would certainly be in college football playoff territory, and they would then, more than likely, as long as they don't drop another game, be headed to the SEC championship game. So good for each of those 3 teams. USC is now completely, if they weren't before, out of the college football playoff picture. They're still in the hunt for the Pac-12 championship game because they only have 1 Pac-12 loss, and there's every team but Washington has at least 1 loss in the conference. So there's a chance the Trojans can at least get into that conference championship game, but with 2 losses, they're down to number 24 in the AP poll. They're out of the college football playoff picture, barring a 2007-like end to this season. One of the debate that kind of exists stemming from this weekend as another team joined the 1-loss group that I think numbers somewhere around about 10 teams that are kind of in that college football playoff picture range inside that top 15 or 16. Which of those 1-loss teams in that group is the best one? As they're playing right now, I would say it's the Crimson Tide out of Alabama. I think Nick Saban has them rolling in Tuscaloosa. They get a comfortable win, really, against Tennessee this past week, and I think Alabama's looking like the best 1-loss team. But diving in now to that top 10, I'm going to go through this a little bit quicker because I kind of gave a look at each of these teams in different ways throughout this video. Michigan, I still have at number 1. Again, the question is, how will the investigation affect them at all, and if so, how much? It certainly didn't, as they had the biggest win over their rivals Michigan State since I think 1947 with a 49-0 win over the Spartans. Ohio State I have bumping up to number 2. They have a tough test at 5-2 Wisconsin, 7:30 Eastern on NBC. Florida State up to number 3 after kind of turning around from a couple of lackluster performances. They are at Wake Forest this week. Number 4, Washington. I had the Huskies drop down a little bit with that performance against Arizona State. Georgia at 5. They had a bye week. Again, it'll be interesting to see. I think this is the first game that they'll play without Brock Bowers for the entirety of the game. They face a tough Florida team that's 5-2, that's played better than kind of how they started the season, and I think the Gators will definitely pose a challenge, but I think the Bulldogs probably get a win. Oklahoma down to 6. Tough, close game against UCF again that should have been more comfortable. They have a chance to kind of get a little bit of a bounce back, move up in these rankings at 5-2 Kansas. Talked about Texas already. Queen Ewers is out for a few weeks, more than likely, so it'll be interesting to see how they do. I have them at 8 or at 7. Then at 8, I have Alabama. Again, I think they're looking like the best team among those 1-loss group, but the head-to-head still is very important, so that's why I have them behind Texas. Oregon at 9, Penn State 10, dropping after loss to Ohio State. Utah 11. Again, Oregon goes to Provo, Provo's BYU. goes to Salt Lake City to face Utah. A big game this Saturday, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific time. I guess it'd be 1:30 Mountain time then. Then Ole Miss is probably the toughest game on their slate, is obviously at Georgia November 11th. They're still looking good, though, starting to really pile up the wins. The only loss they have is at Alabama, so they're probably out of the SEC championship game picture, but they're still a team to keep an eye on. If they can upset Georgia and finish with one loss, even if Alabama's representing the West in the SEC championship game in Atlanta, I think the Rebels have a good chance, especially assuming teams in front of them drop games, which will happen because there's a few teams from the same conferences that will match up. It's very possible that Ole Miss can get into that picture. Oregon State, they have kind of couple of tough road tests, I think back-to-back weeks coming up here at Arizona and at Colorado. Need to get through both of those, and then they'll eventually end the season with a home game against Washington and at Oregon. If they can run the table, they're very much in the college football playoff picture. I would imagine they lose probably both of those games, but potentially maybe they pull a little bit of an upset on either Washington or Oregon. And then Mizzou, talked about them briefly. They have at Georgia and then home against Tennessee back-to-back weeks. If they can win one of those, they end the season strong, finish 10-2. They're out of the college football playoff picture, but a big turnaround season for Eli Drinkwitz and the Tigers. But that is it for this rundown of kind of my Week 8 observations, looking at the top 10 and a quick look ahead to some of the matchups this weekend. If you have any comments below, let me know what you thought about this past week. If you thought, especially the Ohio State-Penn State game, was that good offense or good defense or bad offense, mix of both. Let me know who you have as kind of your maybe top 4, who you'd have in the playoff as of today. And let me know what you're looking forward to down the back stretch, the home stretch of this college football season as we get into really what is crunch time as we approach November. But if you've watched this point in the video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burtnett. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the college football season as we pick up into the biggest time of the year. It's Peter Burtnett signing out. Peace.